our guest speaker, Charles Crawford. Welcome today to this special session. I really commend you on your commitment to the club, to take your time of our out-of-the-normal term meeting to be here today. So like we always do, we want to reward you for being here, so we start with a round of applause to bring some energy to the table. The good news is that you're going to be very, very happy with the outcome that you're going to see today. You will enjoy the time that you're going to spend and learn some intricacies of how to be a better communicator, an effective leader, and above all, a master negotiator. Is that right, Charles?
No. Maybe partly right.
So we'll start our program. I'll just give you an outline of what the day is going to look like today, or the hour and a half. We will start with a short introduction about our guest speaker, followed by our regular table topics, which will be Toastmaster Melissa, as she always brings in some really exciting topics. And then we'll dive straight into the art of public speaking and negotiation skills. As Gerald Ford once said, if I had to go back again in school in my life, I would concentrate on two things: learning to write and to be able to speak effectively in front of an audience. Nothing in life is more important than being able to communicate effectively. With that, I now invite Toastmaster Maria to introduce our guest for tonight, or this afternoon, Charles Crawford.
On a chilly November evening in 2011, Poland's Foreign Minister, Radosław Sikorski, stood before the German Society of Foreign Affairs in Berlin and delivered one of the best speeches of his career. The speech made headlines all over the world. It was full of passion, of leadership, and also of vision for the future. But why am I actually talking about this speech today when we have Charles Crawford with us? For a very simple reason. As this book confirms, no one will be surprised to know that Sikorski, in crafting the speech, consulted extensively with Charles, who was his fellow Oxford colleague, and also, of course, Britain's former ambassador to Poland and also to Belgrade. So today with us, we do not only have a fantastic speechwriter, a diplomat with an extensive diplomatic career, but we also have a book author who, to any one of you who have not read it yet, I would definitely advise you to do so. Because it gives all those vivid, lively examples which, by reading it, you can learn and then apply in practice. As the most important thing is not about the message you are conveying to the audience, but the message the audience is hearing itself. And the thing I learned by reading this book, talking to Charles, and also hearing a lot from the people who have worked with him, who have been to his training, who could benefit from his expertise, was this mixture of professionalism and also of a very light, impeccably light, fun touch. And I believe this is something all of us who are working for United Nations, who are working for the international environment, can always use in our careers. The capacity to present things in a light, fun manner attracting attention, but not just attracting momentaneously, but managing to keep it. And there can be no better person to teach us how to do this than Charles. So let me ask you, applause for him. Charles.
Thank you, Maria. And as I have said, we'll start with the table topics, which is about impromptu speaking, thinking on the feet, get your thoughts right in order, and be able to assert yourself in those 1 or 2 minutes. With that, I now introduce to you Toastmaster Melissa with table topics for today.
Good afternoon, everybody. It's great to see today we have a balanced, almost more guests than club members. So maybe this will prompt you to enroll right away in our club, where we have these fantastic sessions. So in our impromptu speeches, I'll be calling some of our fellow Toastmasters to provide 1 to 2 minute speech about a specific topic. And then I'll also invite Charles, because I think we can learn a lot from him. And when I was thinking back and talking with our fellow Toastmasters that helped organize today's session, we were thinking back of one of the funniest table topic sessions we had, and it was related to people trying to describe words that sometimes they have no idea what it is, but just trying to come up with a story of what the word could be, where it derives from, and what is the application of the words in the current context. So, and also I was thinking, since Charles is here and he loves very long and complicated words, right Charles? I thought this was the perfect combination, so it's actually the opposite. You'll see that Charles really disencourages the use of long complicated words because it makes every speech, written or oral speech, more difficult to absorb. So, but I just thought that it would be an interesting thing. And then I have a few maybe more serious table topics today here, which are just some randomly picked New York Times bestsellers. So it's names of books, and that to just make the session also a little bit more serious. So we have a mix of fun and serious topics. So if I can start with the wonderful words from Charles, if I can ask Toastmaster Ines? Please join and speak one wonderful words here. So the word you picked today is absquatulate. Absquatulate. The floor is yours.
Hello, Toastmasters, honored guests. This is very mean. I know. Today is a very special date. Have you looked at the date? 19.
Wow.
Google it. Perhaps you find something. I remember this date very well because I was on this date 5 years ago, actually on the same date 5 years ago, in South Sudan. There was a problem. I had to get out of the station. I was on mission, and my office colleagues said, Ines, you have to get out. How? Okay. There were no flights, no ships, no buses, no helicopters. And I thought, the only thing I could do is go to the security guard. Perhaps they have a way to tell me. So, this is actually a word, but a concept which I really could put to such a situation. You are against the wall, and I could not do anything at that time. I come to the security guard, and the security guard tell me, There is no bus, there are no ships, there are no helicopters. You have to find out how to get out. I got out.
Yes, it's a complicated word, but you got it right. It's actually a word that still can be used today, meaning to flee or run away, usually with something or someone. So, well done, you got it. Well, Toastmaster Vicky, would you like to pick another?
Would I like to?
Good question. That's a definition of don't read it, that's all. Padiculation. Padiculation.
You have to
Yes. Yes.
Fellow Toastmasters, honoured guests, have you ever been in a situation where you absolutely do not know what to do? This is where I am now. But being a Toastmaster, we learn how to speak and how to communicate. And that is why I'm going to explain a word called pandiculation. And it reminds me of, the sound of it reminds me of tongue, which means living, diculation, to talk. So basically, to talk about everything. Now, time would not last for me to talk about everything. So I reduce it to the simple word, pandiculation.
Thank you for your speech and for your guest. In this case, actually, manipulation means something else. Sorry. It's something you have done many times in your life, and it's contagious. It's the act of yawning, or more specifically, to stretching of oneself. Manipulation derives from the Latin word pandiculare, which means to stretch oneself, from pandere, which means to stretch. But it was a good stretch. Can I ask now Charles to pick one up? Antediluvian.
Well, dear Toastmasters, you know the expression, once upon a time? We all start a story with once upon a time. The fairy or the princess or the king or the lizard did whatever it did. This idea, antediluvian, I'm lucky because I do actually have some sense of what this word means. It means going right back in time, once upon a time, 10 million years ago, or even further back than that. So the idea of antediluvian is, in its metaphorical sense, is rather sort of, primitive or sort of backward, if you can use that language. People have antediluvian attitudes. It means they're stuck in the mist of time. They're not up with where we are now. And that's bad. But maybe antediluvian can also be good, because you want to think about the past and you want to think about where we've come from, and maybe you can invent a new word, post-diluvian, which is where you've moved that far into the future and you've come up with a good idea as well. So that's it. Thank you.
Well done. It's quite true. Antediluvian typically means something really old. For example, did you see that antediluvian phone she was carrying? I remember that from the 90s. So you might be in a meeting with the antediluvian speech, and then you know what it is. You can think of another word? Thomas? Would you like to think?
Thank you.
We have the winner.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, fellow Toastmasters and guests, what we try to do here is to promote speaking, public speaking, so we do believe in the power of words. However, there is one difficulty. We constantly struggle with the influence that the image has on us. And when I was sitting here, I was constantly looking at the image over there on this building, and I tried to figure out what the hell that might be. Some of you might be able to see it. It looks like something that could fly in the ball, or I don't know. I don't know what it is. But you see, what's the problem that we have to defend the words against the image? And bringing me back to this one, it's somehow, well, the ending is Eugenius is maybe Phineas was ridiculous. No? The punch she drew. So, I guess it's something important, of course. The pulching, I don't know what pulching could mean. Oh, it's punch actually. Pool. To be honest, that's still it's not any easier. So I guess in this case I will use the battle against the image over there, and I will leave you having a look at what's outside.
Alright, so now for the meaning of Pukritudinius. Yes. So, ladies, if you ever encounter a man who calls you Pukritudinius, he just might be a keeper, because this 15-letter adjective means beautiful. And what's more interesting is that the word only applies to beauty of people. There is something special about being Pukritudinius, and you have got it. Toastmaster Nicole? Please, pick one wonderful word. Let's see.
I've got to do my glasses on.
Probdinarian.
Okay. No problem.
No problemo.
I'm just going to repeat it to you because it's a complicated word. You're going to see it. It's broad, ding, nag, gian. And I was just talking to Rena before we started the meeting. Rena comes from India. She spent her vacation in India. And as she knows, this is an Indian word. Well, at least you know that. How can I tell? Because when it's spelled out, it says N-A-G-E-E. And anything that's in A-G-E-E,
Should be
it's
Indian.
got to be Indian. And of course, at the beginning, you have broad, broading. But I think there's a spelling mistake. It should be Buddha. No? So in fact, what should be Budinganyan? So you see, it sounds already more Indian. So Budinganyan, of course, has to do with a Buddha. Let's see.
I agree.
And you know that the had followers. All right? So in this case, the Nagi or Nagyan is the Buddha follower. But here we have a plural. So, when you have Nagyan and not Nagi, it's a plural. Nagyan is a plural of Nagi. And I don't see why you're laughing at me. It should be clear to me. So remember, people, Buddha, Nagi is the follower of the Buddha. Buddha, Nagyan is the plural of Buddha, Nagi.
Yes, it was an excellent speech. In fact, this word simply means huge or giant, and often refers to anything from Rob Dingnag, a fictional place created by Jonathan Swift, where everything was giant. Yes. So we will close now the table topics. Maybe you just ask Charles for one more, and then we start with your presentation. And now it's yes. No. You just pick one more. It was impromptu speech. Now we just instead of a word, we're going to name of a book. So the name of the book you picked is called From the Ground Up, and it's about the former executive chief of Starbucks recounting his journey to success and sharing inspirational stories of others. So, Charles, what do you think are the Starbucks reasons for success and
I don't know about you, but if I go to the airport and there is a Starbucks, I just feel sick. I do not like Starbucks coffee. It's sort of big and it's just not nice, to be honest. And yet, everywhere you look, I mean, you go to strange places, you would have thought they wouldn't have a Starbucks. There it is. So I think this is the point, really. I mean, it's a very American idea of coffee, if I can be politically incorrect. It's big. Starbucks coffee. It's not, I was in Madrid 2 days ago. You ask for a cappuccino, you get they say, would you like a big one is like that. A big Starbucks is like that. So what this gentleman did, and he's done really well, he's taken the simple idea, it's very glamorous, it's sort of internet-y, it's cool, he's managed to take big, nasty coffee and make it successful. And well done him, because I guess there's a market for this, I was, if I should say this, but I'm not. I remember years ago reading about I think she was 88, a woman who was 88, and she was a call girl. And someone said to her, you still selling your body at the age of 88? She said, sure. And he said, there cannot be a market for that. She said, honey, there's a market for everything. That applies to Starbucks coffee, as you can see.
On that note, before we jump into the real presentation, there is a saying that will rhyme with today's presentation. A wise man raises his hand when he has something to say. A wise man raises his hand when he has something to say. A novice may raise his hand when he has to say something. With that, I present to you very honored, very well distinguished and experienced Charles Crawford with the art of public speaking and negotiation.
Turn the light off a bit. That's better. Right. long words, and this is really hard. I mean, if you go on the internet, people probably heard me say this last time, but if you go on the internet and go on my website, there's how I went to my first and really, apart from this, only Toastmasters meeting. I didn't like it very much, to be honest, because I thought they didn't analyse whether the speeches were any good. They analyse the technique. Do you use long words or short words? Do you say and ah? Do you have eye contact? Do you walk around? All this technical stuff. But no one said if the speech was any good as a speech. But the best one of the night was the first one. It was one of these table topic things. And you had a little bag, and you had to draw a letter out of the bag, and it had Scrabble, the little Scrabble pieces. It was a letter, and you had to give a speech on a subject beginning with that letter. So if it was, you draw out the letter K, you've got to talk about something beginning with K. Very hard. And the best speech of the evening was one of those. And that, I think, is, to be honest, as we've seen today when Toastmasters, is just terrific. Because it's forcing you to think on your feet and commit, and look how well everyone did today. None of these little speeches were terrible. On the contrary, but they could have been. I mean, 2 or 3 times people didn't know what the word meant. I hadn't heard of 2 of them. But they kept going, and it was funny, and it was amusing, and it was really nice, and the technique was linked to good content, and this is really what I'm going to talk about to you today. They asked me to talk about, because I'm here at IAEA, I'm upstairs with the safeguards people. We're doing a leadership course, but quite a lot of what we're doing in that is negotiating. Some of you, have any of you been on the negotiating class? I think someone has here, somebody, or 2 people. Seen all this before. So, but what's the link between them is what I'm going to talk about today, and it turns out there are some. So if you haven't seen me before, this is me. I spent a lot of time doing all this bilateral diplomacy. I didn't work in the international organisations, I was in countries, and that was fun. And I left the Foreign Office, about 12 years ago now, and this is what I ended up doing. How that happened, I don't know. I've won, as Maria was it kindly said, these speech writing prizes. These are like the Cicero Awards. They're the Oscars of speech writing, insofar as we have such a thing, and I've won 2 of these things. And you can see at the bottom, my speech was called Why? The Future of the Funeral Services Sector. You can write a great speech about literally anything. Anything. If I can win a prize for writing about the funeral services sector, guys, you can win a prize for any of the work you do in this building because it's so interesting. And here's the book which Marcia kindly quoted from, and if anyone wants to, she urged you to buy it, and I urge you to buy it, and I've got some copies in the boxes there. All you have to do is pay. And some of you may have friends, so if you want to buy 20 copies, that's also fine. So this is really what all my presentations sort of start with, really. This guy. Male or female, I don't know. What's he thinking?
Yes. Yes.
Well, I put this one up because it's the best approximation I can get of this idea. What is this about? I went to where I first met Melissa was at the UN Emerging Leaders sort of training, what do they call it, course they have in Turin. And I was there a few weeks ago for one of these courses, and I do the public speaking bit, and Melissa has people doing other bits. They spend a week there. And I was giving my thing on public speaking, and I said, okay guys, when you're writing a speech, where do you start? Where do you start? And someone says, Maria, the Foreign Minister would like to write a speech about Brexit and the situation in France. I said, where do you start? Anyway, there was a gentleman there, and he said, put his hand up, he said, you start with the message. I said, well, no, you don't really. He said, yes, you do. I said, well, you don't. He said, yes, you do. And anyway, he then got very angry and spent the rest of the day sulking and he actually made a complaint about me afterwards. But it got me thinking, well, how do you start a speech? Well, not giving it, but how do you start preparing it? With the table topics, you've got no time. Really? Just so you had a bit more time, where would you start? And what I realised was, do you know how a spider makes its web? How does a spider start its web? Sorry? Well, someone once said it starts in the middle, which is a slightly weird idea because you can't start in the middle, right? It has to be attached to something. What a spider does, it sort of looks around, I suppose in a spidery way. And then it just shoots out silk, and its silk floats around, and then eventually it hits something and it sticks, and it's got one line, and then it starts building it from that one line. But the point I'm making is it doesn't know where it's going to stick. But what it does have a sense of is the shape of the space. I'm going to point my silk in that direction because I think that might work. And that's how I think we should start a speech, by thinking about the space. And this is why I'm talking today about negotiation as well. What's this about? Think about the space. Think about the biggest thing you can think about before you worry about the message. The message, if you like, is like the bullet in your gun. But it's great to have a bullet and it's great to have a gun. But do you need that bullet for that target? Should you be shooting at all? Why are you here? Before you worry about the bullet. So if you get the big picture right, the things like the message then start to fit. So if you're in a negotiation or you're preparing a speech, both these things are the same. Think about what's going on. This is the thought. And this is why in our negotiation class, I'm going to give you one or two technical negotiating phrases here. This isn't a negotiation course, obviously, it's just it's an impressionist picture of negotiating. What's this? Anchor. What does it do?
It calms you down. It gives stability.
Okay, but why?
When you want to stay in one place.
You want to?
The focus. The focus.
Yeah, the sort of idea is you drop the anchor from the ship and it sort of pretty much goes straight down. So if the ship's like this, it nonetheless can move a bit. The ship sways on the top, it can't go all the way over there unless it drags the anchor. So what the anchor does is sort of say, okay, let's stay here in this space, this part of the harbour, this part of the sea, this part of the lake, right? So what you do in a speech and in a negotiation is you anchor the issues. And I cannot tell you enough, folks. This is something that drives us crazy, because no one's ever really asked us in these classes to do sessions on meetings. A lot of you, has anyone been to a meeting here ever? How many of those meetings were really, really good? No, probably not that many. But there is technique to running a good meeting and getting good follow-up and getting good results. And one of the things you have to do is anchor the issues. And that's not the same as having an agenda. The agenda is sort of part of that. But basically, it's saying what the meeting is about. We're here today, colleagues, to talk about two things. Resources and security. Money and safety. Does everyone agree that that's a good... This is why we're here. And someone might say, but hang on a minute, what about risk? You say, great, okay, we've got three things here. Resources, security, and risk. And you've anchored the meeting in those three things. And then you can say, do we agree we're going to leave here with an agreement? And everyone says, oh yes. So that you've anchored the issue, you've anchored the process in a sense of agreement. So if things get stuck later on in the meeting, you can say, but look, what's your name? Beta. Beta, look, you're making some great points, but if we carry on with that, we won't reach the agreement we agreed we were going to have. Can I ask you to be a bit more flexible? And Beta says, okay, because she's agreed that she wants an agreement. So this is what I mean by anchoring a meeting. It's very, very important to start strongly. And that's the same, basically the same with a speech. So typically on our negotiation classes, we say that all negotiations, whether it's Brexit, whether it's Israel, Palestine, whether it's the French president negotiating with his gilets jaunes, whether it's you arguing with your boss about your next job, whether it's you arguing with your family members about which pizza place you go to, they all come down to things like this: security, resources, control, reputation, and time. And the really hardest negotiations are the ones where security is at stake. Because that's really bad if you have no security. If you lose your job, or, you know, a lot of the people arguing against Israel say Israel shouldn't exist. Now, whatever you think about that issue, you can understand that if you are an Israeli, there's not much to talk about if that's your starting position. That makes it very difficult for you not to exist as a country, makes it very hard. And that's why it's been stuck for 50, 60 years. And resources are sort of linked to security because you can't live without resources. You know, you need food and you need money. And then you have these things. So effectively, security and resources are about you. Control and reputation are about you and others, how others see you. And this thing is about risk. I think risk is an underestimated phenomenon. People's attitude to risk, institutional attitudes to risk, change a lot. So this is almost any negotiation, you can anchor it in one or two of these things. Because that actually is what it's about. The immediate agenda may not mention these things, but that's what the issue is about. And so with a speech, you know, what's your speech about? They talk about the future of the IAEA. What's that about? It's about security. It's maybe about reputation. It's maybe about how you control international issues. Maybe it's about time. All these things can be worked into your speech. What I'm trying to get you to think about is thinking about it at the big picture level. What's your speech about? How can you come up with something like the last speaker did? What's her name?
Nicole.
She hadn't the faintest idea, as far as I can see, what Rob-Ding-Naggio means. But she made it about India. She made it about language. Fantastic job, done on the spur of the moment. I mean, really, really good. So see what she did, and pretty much all the speakers did that. They anchored the speech in an idea. They came up with an idea. You anchored the speech in the thing you can see out of the window. Terrific. It's like the tent pole of, you know, a tent, you have a pole holds the tent up. You need a tent pole for your speech, what it's about. And that tends to be something quite abstract. That's the point, to make it as big as you possibly can, and then you've got options. So, tone is very important. People don't talk enough about tone. They talk about technique and they talk about messaging. They talk about outcomes. They talk about all this stuff. They talk about tone. Tone in a negotiation and tone in a speech are so important. What's the tone of what you're trying to do? Because if there's a mismatch between what you're saying and your tone, all people are hearing confusion. It's not what you say, it's... No! It's not what you say, it's what they hear. It's what they hear. And if you're saying, hey, please come in, I've got really bad news for you, you're fired. I mean, you're hearing... you're hearing, oh my God, there's something right here.
You wouldn't do due diligence on the LSI Holdings deal? Well, I found some irregularities. No, not with their numbers, with yours. Applied Sciences, the whole division of Wayne Enterprises just disappeared overnight. I went down to the archives and I started pulling some old files. You know, tell me you didn't recognize your baby out there kicking cop cars on the evening news. Now, you've got the entire R&D department burning through cash, thinking it's related to cell phones for the Army. What are you building for now? Rocket ship. I want $10 million a year for the rest of my life.
Let me get this straight. You think that your client, one of the wealthiest, most powerful men in the world, is secretly a vigilante who spends his nights feeding criminals to a corp with his bare hands? And your plan is to blackmail this person?
Keep that.
Now, these Hollywood movies, of course, are wonderful. They're beautifully written, they're very clever, they're very short. But that is a negotiation. Now, it's easy to, in our negotiation classes, we properly analyse this. And other type, Godfather and these other things. Think about the tone of that. The tone of the young man. It's very sort of shallow and confident. And the tone of Morgan Freeman is, really? And the young man sort of backed off. Where I live in the countryside, we used to have a dog. And there's Crawford Towers down here, okay? And I went out, it's a country lane, I went out on the lane with the dog. And there is a cat about 40 metres away. And the dog is a completely crazy dog, chases after the cat. The cat has three options. One is to say, meh, and just walk into the bush. Or it might say, uh-oh, and sort of run into the bush quite quickly. What's the other option?
Attack the dog.
It just sat there like a cat, and the dog got close, and it goes like this. And this dog, I could not believe my eyes. It went like this. You could not believe the way that dog just went straight past that. And there's videos on YouTube of dogs and cats, same sort of thing. But this is that young man. The young man is the dog. Morgan Freeman says. Now the interesting question is, folks, if you are the young man, you think you found out who Batman is, you want to benefit from this, what do you say in the negotiation? That's a negotiation. You've got things, you know, you think they want or are prepared to pay for. What would you say?
Maybe you do not put all the cards on the table.
But at some point you have to put them on the table.
You demand?
Sorry?
You demand?
Well, he did demand. He basically demanded. He said, I want $10 million a year because I'm strong and you're weak. The mistake he's making here is that he hasn't thought about what's going on. Who in this situation is strong and who is weak? Now, you don't need to answer all this. We could spend hours on it because it's a very subtle little case.
Who is a man?
Well, the point is they're both strong in different ways and they're both weak in different ways. Who has the bigger problem? Now, Batman has a problem because this crazy guy seems to have discovered something. But the young man has a problem because Batman might not be happy that he's discovered something. You see what's happening? They're trading problems. So when I ask people, what should you say? What's the right answer? The answer is, say nothing. Just push the paper across the table and let Morgan Freeman do the work. You're anchoring the issue in this, but you're keeping it very vague and open. And you're getting the tone right. You're not committing yourself to saying, hello, I'm really strong and you're a loser, give me $10 million. No one likes that. You're getting them to do the work. And part of I think of our negotiation classes is get the other side to do the work, because who wants the work? So that's anchoring. Then you get this next technical term called reframing. Framing the issues is like anchoring the issues, you set them in a certain context, and then you can reframe them. You can move the issue. Okay, well I thought this was all about risk and about resources. It turns out it's all about security. And so you can then shift the issue somewhere else. You reframe the issues. And very good language for this in a negotiation context is what I'm hearing. What I'm hearing from this side of the table is they're really worried about resources. I'm hearing from this side of the table they're really worried about risk. What if they give you something on resources, you give them something on risk? Is that the basis for a deal? And you reframe the issue, but using the language of hearing and listening. This is professional mediation technique. So this is an important thing to know. But speeches also do this. A great speech can reframe the issues. Because that's effectively what you did in your speech. You started off by and then you said, aha, it's really all about India. And then you moved in a different direction. And so, as I said, I think last time, when you're giving a speech, if you're moving from moving the anchor from here to there, you're reframing the issues from this to that, make it very clear. This is what I call the hinge in the speech. A hinge is where the thing turns, like a door. You thought you were going in that direction, we're now going in this direction. This moment has to be clear. It's a very big moment, in a negotiation and in a speech. Spot the hinge in this speech. Spot the reframing moment.
Councilman, I stand before you not only as your queen. I come to you as a mother. I come to you as a wife. I come to you as a Spartan woman. I come to you with great humility. I am not here to represent Leonidas. His actions speak louder than my words ever could. I am here for all those voices which cannot be heard, mothers, daughters, fathers, sons. 300 families that bleed for our rights and for the very principles this room was built upon. We are at war, gentlemen. We must send the entire Spartan army to aid our king in the preservation of not just ourselves, but of our children. Send the army for the preservation of liberty. Send it for justice. Send it for law and order. Send it for reason. But most importantly, send our army for hope. Hope that Achilles' men have not been wasted to the pages of history. That their courage bonds us together. That we are made stronger by their actions. And that your choices today reflect their bravery.
Now, in my book, I analyse these and various other movies. There's one or two things which are wrong with that, I would say, as a speechwriter, in terms of the words. But the way she delivers it is terrific. Question, immediate question today, what's the reframing moment?
From queen to mother.
Not only.
As a Spartan woman,
We're at war.
Thank you. What's your name?
Brittany. Brittany.
Brittany. You see, if you think about the structure of that speech, the first part is slightly sort of sentimental. I'm here for all mothers and daughters. Pause. We are at war, gentlemen. She's a Spartan queen. She loves war. And she smiles. You know, it's like bad news, good news. Bad news for all this terrible things going on. Good news, we're at war. Let's act as if we really are at war. Stop messing around. Get stuck in.
Then she changed the tone.
Yeah, but she changes the tone, exactly. But this is the point about she reframes the discussion. It's a good example of the hinge and the reframing and the tone and the voice and the pauses. Everything works together. So it's not just the technique. Sorry, the pause and the tone of voice and the little smile. it's that the structure of the speech works that way as well. So I really, really, really think, and this is what makes me different from some other people who do all this work, you've got to start with the content. If the content is good, you can add the tricks. But you can't add the tricks to bad content.
Is this also not change emotions?
Absolutely, yeah, sure, it's all the same. Yeah. I mean, it's emotion, it's tone, it's silence, it's body language, it's smiling. There's a whole lot going on there. But the point is she makes it clear. She reframes the whole discussion using a combination of those elements. That's the point. So that, in a way, brings us to this similarity between public speaking and negotiating. You have to control. And when I say control, I don't mean in being controlling and horrid and that sort of control. I mean, you have to have authority. A speaker has to control the space effectively. And the bigger the room, the harder it is to control the space. It was this year or last year. I had to write a speech for a young British woman. She was 30 or something. She had to give a speech to a conference in Florida, 3,000 people at her business, her American partners or whatever it was. 3,000 people. She had to talk for 45 minutes. This is serious business. So, you know, we've spent a lot of time talking about how she would control the space. Everything had to sound big. You can't have little fiddly things in a space of 3,000 people. So this is what we talk about in our negotiation classes and to some degree in the public speaking classes. Does anyone know these gentlemen here? There's this one you're probably familiar with. What about these? Chirac. We all know Chirac. Who are the other three? Very good. From where? Bosnia. This is President Izetbegovic. This is President Krajisnik, and this is President Zubak. After the Dayton Peace Agreement, and it's still there, the presidency of Bosnia is a job share between three people. One Bosnian Muslim Bosniak, one Bosnian Croat, one Bosnian Serb. This guy ended up in The Hague. I knew all these people, except Chirac. I negotiated a lot with all of them when I was there in Bosnia after Dayton. It was difficult. Now, they had, after the Dayton elections, you had a year after the Dayton Peace Agreement, you had elections. They were all elected into power. They had to sit down and start building the country. That was their job. So, they had to sit down at a table which was about this size. It wasn't a horrid modern table like this, it was a nice table, but it was about this size. Imagine a round table like this. 3 people sitting at a round table. You will notice that it doesn't matter how you sit, because if it's us 3 here, however I sit, I'm going to be next to you and you, and however we sit, you're going to be next to... How long did they spend arguing about sitting at a round table? 3 hours. Why? Because there are different triangles. There are 3 possible triangles. One is all sides equal. One is 2 sides equal. One is no sides equal. These are the only sorts of triangles you can have. And each one of them, for these crazy people, represented an interpretation of the Dayton Peace Agreement of their own status. So what they were doing was using control of the process, namely how you sit at a round table, as a metaphor for these wider political issues. I mean, insane, obviously. I was standing outside with the Russian ambassador all there waiting for them just to sit down and get on with it, which is, of course, eventually what they did. But a lot of diplomacy is actually about process, which flags are there, you know, how you sit and all this sort of stuff. A lot goes on in this. Don't underestimate it. So whether it's for public speaking or a negotiation room, think about everything fitting. The occasion, the venue, the room, the table, the audience, the interpreting, the message, and the tone. How do you get everything to fit? Because if it doesn't all fit, you may end up with a mess. In fact, the chances are you will end up with a mess if something doesn't fit. And how you organise the table in a negotiation, it's so important. There's lots of options. I'm not going to go into all that today, but it's just something to think about, and people often don't think about it. And because they don't think about it, they get the tone wrong. Now, next idea in negotiation teaching we give is you have to listen to the other side. You want to listen. But you have to show the other side you're listening. It's a different thing. So if I say, okay, what I'm hearing from you is this, and I'm hearing from you is that, I'm showing that I'm hearing. I'm using their words back to them. Very powerful practical technique. What? Remember the Batman one? The guy said, I want $10 million a year for the rest of my life. What happened then? It's an interesting example of the young man wasn't listening. What happened next? Morgan Freeman takes off his glasses. What does Morgan Freeman say?
Let me get this straight.
Yeah, so he said, what does he basically say? He basically says, you know, Mr. Tough Guy, try it. What doesn't he say?
No.
He doesn't say no. He doesn't say no. He's testing the other guy, and the other guy is like a dog who just runs past the cat and runs away. He can't cope with the stress. But if he listened, he could have said, I noticed you didn't say no. How are we going to deal with this situation? And he could have pushed back, but he didn't. He just collapsed. So Morgan Freeman played a bluff on him, basically, by giving the impression he'd said no, but he didn't actually say no. So this is why these little movie clips are very powerful. There's a lot going on there, below the surface as well as what's on the surface. And you have to listen. And I think when you're giving a speech, I think you saw that with the table topics today pretty much, because everyone was good ready. The speaker has to listen to the audience. If you go on YouTube, you'll see my video of where I helped this young British woman. She had to give a 45-minute speech. She prepared it for 5 months. Keynote speech to her professional conference. 45 minutes. And she turned up on one of my courses, and after this is about 5 days before the speech. She prepared it for 5 months. She hadn't slept for weeks because she was so stressed. And she came on my course and she said, everything I've prepared is crap, I've got to start again. So I said, yeah, it is crap, you have to start again. So I worked with her and it was fine. She did it all again, but she did it properly. She did it like this. And she said, and if you watch the video, it's interesting. If you're interested in technique, she's someone who went through this process with me. So I interviewed her afterwards and we put it on YouTube, so it was interesting. She said, for 45 minutes, I could hear the audience listening to me. She could hear them listening. In this room today, you could hear people listening to those tabletops, topic forms. You could hear them listening in different ways. And that's the relationship you're aiming to have as a public speaker. You've got to listen to the audience and listen to yourself. And the point is, if the audience are listening to you, you've sort of got them, and you can push it a bit. And then when you push it a bit, they're having an even better time, and you hear they're having an even better time, and you push it a bit more, and everyone, it just gets better and better and better. But you can't do that if you're just locked in your own little world as a speaker, or as a negotiator. Now look, in this one, watch what happens here. This is from CTBTO here.
Here.
This is from the CTBTO.
Oh, the vignettes.
Yeah. This is from the CTBTO, and the red team are the sort of bad guys. They're the inspected state party, and the blue team are the CTBTO, and they're looking for all this stuff. Look at this exchange, and watch, think about it as a negotiation. Who wins and who loses, and exactly why is the question.
Okay, so one consideration is that there are people living right here, and so once we leave, there is a risk that the equipment would be tampered with, and particularly that the batteries would be taken out. So once we leave, we can't guarantee that the equipment will not be tampered with. So if there's another location that's near here that would be less obvious for the people who are here, that would be suitable, that would probably be a more preferable location.
Another point is we can go with one car 1 or 2 kilometers across this road to look for another place, and the other cars can stay here. Is it okay for you?
My guidance is that we, keep everything grouped together.
Okay, okay. So it's not possible. We can go all together. If there's no place, if there's no better place, we come back and try to start. Is it okay for you?
See what happens there? The blue team says, well, okay, what if one car stays here, one car goes up there? What does the red guy say?
He never said no.
He didn't say no. What exactly did he say? Do you remember? You've got to teach yourself to listen. He said, my guidance is that we should all stay together. He didn't say my orders. He didn't say my instructions. He didn't say, I have no choice but to insist that we all stay together. He said, guidance. What the hell does that mean? It's very open-ended. So the blue guy might have said, guidance. Is there any flexibility in your guidance? Push back, you see, you reflect back the word. He wasn't listening. And then he said, so it's not possible. And what did the red guy say? Nothing. He just sat there. He used silence to give the impression that it was not possible. And the blue guy collapsed and said, okay, fine, let's do it your way, effectively. So, it didn't matter in the end, but it's just a good example of how you've got to listen. Especially in negotiating, you've got to listen to every word, you've got to listen to the gestures to get the best results. And of course that applies to the public speaking side of it as well. Now we talked about this last time, I think. Silence, pauses, in negotiation, public speaking, it's all the same thing. Let the silence do the work. That red guy there, let the silence do the work. To some degree, Morgan Freeman, let the silence do the work. Much more measured, much slower, slow it down. This one, next one, this is a new one, I haven't shown this to anyone before. It's this guy Jordan Peterson, who's a controversial psychology guy, doesn't matter. A young student asks him about Nietzsche. Nietzsche is the famous German philosopher who had very dark ideas about human nature. Watch the video, but what I want you to look at here is the power of the silence.
He talked about this kind of person like they were just a mirror. Like they stretched, he said, every part of their skin basically to allow every new piece of information that they took on. And then all they ever were was just an instrument. They were just a mirror reflecting what they had learned, never actually having generated anything on their own. And it's bothered me because I don't know, how are you supposed to create something?
That's a really good question. I mean, Nietzsche is often classed with the existentialists, right? And so one of the tenets of existentialism, there's two real tenets of existentialism. There's more, but obviously we're oversimplifying. But one is that life is a problem. It isn't because there's something wrong with you. It's that life is a problem. And so that's often contrasted with the Freudian view, which is that if you have a problem, it's because something went wrong during your development. The existentialist said, no, it's like life is a problem, make no mistake about it. And that the purpose of scholarship is in some sense to solve that problem. And so for Nietzsche, like he said, all truths are bloody truths to me. And what he meant by that was that if an idea didn't incarnate itself in you and transform your perceptions and your actions, then you were merely possessed by the idea. You were merely a spokesperson for the idea. Or you could say that the idea possessed you. You're a puppet for the idea. It's not you. It's the idea is in you and it has you. You haven't taken the idea and incorporated it with you and made it part of your life.
You see, the pause there is really powerful. I mean, you can see him sort of somehow grappling with the immensity of the question. And it's really a very long pause and almost a bit weird. But it's not bad. I mean, you can listen, I can hear you listening to that pause. It's a very, very striking example of how slowing down. And I think one or two of the table topics, I forget who it was, but someone started with a very long pause, gathering her thoughts. And that's okay. It's part of the performance. And same in the negotiations, slowing down, just letting the silence do some of the work. Excellent technique. Right. Another big point in all this, a common point, never assume. You either know or you don't. You either know or you don't. You never assume, and this is always a disaster. So we come up with this. I use this in every presentation, a version of this. Which is the most important quality in negotiation and public speaking? Accuracy, human touch, strong start, clear message, integrity, confidence. Which is the most important? Which is the one the others sort of depend on? Human touch. Okay. The answer is, the answer for me is accuracy. Because if you've got a human touch but your facts are wrong, disaster. If you've got a clear message but it's the wrong message, disaster. It's very clear. There's a sort of attitude to accuracy and precision and getting everything to fit, which I think is very important. Because your friends love your mistakes, your enemies love your mistakes. Everyone loves your mistakes. This is the German Foreign Minister holding up this distinguished new publication on German-Romanian relations. What's gone wrong? They've got the map of France. Instead of the map of Germany, they've got the map of France. This has gone through dozens of iterations. To the point where the German Foreign Minister is told this is done by the Romanians, not by the Germans. And they've got the wrong map. And this is why today, years afterwards, I'm showing you this ridiculous picture, because the speech was fine, but if the speech is attached to something which is stupid and wrong, the whole thing is a disaster. So this idea of accuracy is very profound, guys. I'm sort of getting close to the end, you'll be pleased to hear. So, I don't know, you have all your templates for PowerPoint, and most of them are terrible. And you say, oh well, but we're told by the template the font has to be 24, or it has to be 28 or 32, but no bigger than that, and the colours. In the template, you can play with the size of the font. This is about 40 or 50. Okay? This is about, probably about 140. This is getting quite big. This is getting up to about 300. The next one is the biggest font I have ever put on a PowerPoint slide. 700 font. But look at the power that has in the room. And the reason I'm showing you these ridiculous slides is, I think it's the same as the cat and the dog. The idea of intensity. Morgan Freeman had intensity. In a way, the red team guy pretended not to have intensity, which is why he was quite efficient. You have to make yourself sound big. And if I can say so, the table topic speakers today, I think in this room, did a pretty good job of that. You have to sound big. Because if you sound big, the issue sounds big. And if you and the issue sound big, the audience feel they're part of something important and they feel big. So this is a huge idea in public speaking. Are you sounding big? And by big, I mean big. And that can mean also being very slow. Slow has a sense of... Big things don't move fast. Big things move quite slowly. They know where they're going. This is my new favourite speech of all time. It literally is arguably the best speech of all time. Nothing in this speech, if this guy would win the Toastmasters table topic thing of the year. But look at the technique, folks. Think about the technique here, not just the words, the technique.
Either you work hard for it, or you won't work hard for it. Well, me and my brother, we work hard for our stuff. It don't come easy. Life you have to work. Either you want to be the shark of the ocean, or the fish of the ocean. And right now, we want to be like the shark. Take over everything. Strength, no weakness. Power, muscle. Have to have that mindset, so you can come here and dominate. When you see, oh, don't put yourself down. Don't keep yourself up, pumped, and ready for any challenge that comes.
It's a brilliant speech. The contrast in there, the tone of voice he uses, the imagery he uses. You could write a book about that as a speech. It's absolutely exquisite. And the pauses, the emphasis, the tone, the body language, the gestures, everything about that's flawless. And it's simple. And he sounds big.
Very big.
Future, I don't know what he is, but he's got the right attitude. He's that cat. He's not messing around. And you need to project that, folks. And that partly comes from your techniques you learn at Toastmasters, but it probably comes from the content. Does the content sound big? And he made that content sound big. It was good content. So, to sum up, anchoring, reframing, silence, accuracy, being big. Less is more in all this often, folks. Less is more. Just slow down. Just slow down. Negotiating, public speaking, just slow down. Let your words have weight. When I'm doing this properly, someone gets up and gives a speech, and you might say, well, I've got a serious issue here. If you use the word serious, it's got to sound serious. If you use the word happy, it's got to sound happy. If you use the word angry, it's got to sound angry. Use the word determined, you've got to sound determined. So you see what I mean? You link the tone of voice to the words, but you can't really do that if you're speaking too fast. And that kid was talking quite quickly, but he nonetheless linked the... He did all this. Anyway. Yeah, thank you.
What a session. Thank you, Charles, for enlightening us and also entertaining us. I'm sure we are a lot more wiser. We understand a lot more about public speaking and negotiation skills. So once more, just to sum it up and to acknowledge the great experience that you've brought to us today, let's put together a round of applause for Charles. And you now have an option to take that prize possession as a prize, of course, which I highly, highly encourage all of you. And we might have 5 to 10 minutes to intermingle and also chat with each other. So thanks again, and I'm sure for those who are not members of our club, this is what Toastmasters brings to you. In addition to our regular program, the value you get from our guest speakers is immense. So I highly, highly encourage that you become part of this great club. We also socialize, so you will not only learn about public speaking and negotiation, but make new friends, open new horizons, and learn from each other. With that, have a great afternoon. And
I have one question. Charles, can you help Lisa me? Can you help Theresa May?
Theresa May.
Yes. Quote now, but the point is, you can help anyone, but they have to want to be helped.
Yeah.
This is the point. That's the thing. You know, they all know I'm out there. But all these, like William Hague, who was the British Foreign Secretary, I'd sort of been in touch with him before they got into power. But he had a speechwriter who was sort of nice. She wasn't really good. And he stuck with her when he became the minister, and his speeches just disappeared without trace. Because she didn't know anything about bloody diplomacy. And to be honest, she didn't know much about speech writing, but he liked her, so that was fine. So, you know, these speeches are very difficult for these leaders. It was difficult for Sikorski, the Polish foreign minister. He got into big trouble for hiring me. Because I'm a British spy. Why are you paying a British spy all this money to write speeches for Poland? This is embarrassing for Poland. It's a scandal, blah, 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 blah. It's not easy to help people. I mean, they have to want to be helped. And the people around them, of course, think that they are great. All these leaders are surrounded by people. I'm sure it's the same in this office. Anywhere, in any organisation, the people around the leader think they are great people and that they are perfect. And they're like a little hedgehog. They're sort of protecting the leader from the organisation. And if you go in there and say, do you think you might need help with speechwriting? How dare you insult our speechwriter? Blah, 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 blah. So the answer is no. Any other questions before we wrap up? Yeah.
Okay, yeah, in this day of alternative facts, how important is accuracy? Because you have world leaders going out there. Nigel Farage is not a world leader, but nothing is fact. You know, nothing is accuracy. But you make a movement and people believe you. And it's so, your speech his speech never had to be accurate. He just had to make people listen. And he created a movement.
But you can, this is the world we live in. You can make a silly noise and millions of people will follow you. And it needn't be a silly noise, it can be a very dangerous noise. You can say whatever you want. I mean, all I'm saying, in the world we live in, by accuracy I don't just mean the words, I mean everything surrounding the speech. But I think the idea of accuracy is, do you want to be someone who speaks with integrity? Or not? And if you do, you've got to take the time to make sure that what you say is defensible. And that it is sort of in a technical sense accurate, but also that you're comfortable defending it. And a good way to do that, folks, is always to take the strongest argument of the other side. I get up and make a speech about the IAEA, saying the IAEA should be abolished. And you have to get up to make a speech against me, saying the IAEA is great. A very good place to start would be to say, what is it about what he said that makes a lot of sense? Engage with the strong points of the other side, don't make debating points, is my sort of way I think. And that helps you, keeps you on the right track of accuracy at that sort of philosophical level. But I mean, you're right, basically, the world is increasingly full of people who just make things up. And you can put them on YouTube, and with the technology, it won't be long before that camera, you can take that camera, that video recording, you can take my voice, you can take someone saying, sexist, nasty, racist, horrible things, put that in my voice, put that in there as part of my speech, no one would ever know the difference. And that'll be around the world like that. That is our world. Deal with it. On that happy note. Anyone who wants a book, all they do is pay. There we are.
How much do we have to pay?
50 euros. Oh, yeah. You can pay more. Pay for that.
And for Mr. Overbeek. Yes, yes.
in the document.
Yeah.